Hello and a warm welcome to another edition of To The Point. On the show this week, Union Food Processing Minister Harsimrat Kaur Badal. Welcome on To The Point.
Thank you so much.
Given the fact that the food processing sector is actually known in the business jargon as the sunrise sector, how is your ministry providing the linkage between the two pillars of economy, that is manufacturing and agriculture?
Yes, you're right that this is a sector that despite all the challenges it faces has been growing faster than agriculture and manufacturing over the last few years. And it does act as a bridge between industry and agriculture. So as a result has a potential to transform the lives of farmers, to bring down wastages, to ensure there's enough for consumers at reasonable prices. And at the same time also ensure that while revenue is earned, this industry is one of the largest generators of employment as well. So I think addressing the three key issues which face our country today, which is to uplift the farmers, to provide employment, as well as to ensure enough food by reducing wastage and at reasonable prices, this sector has the potential to address all three. The problem in this sector has been that although it's been growing at a faster pace than agriculture and manufacturing, but it still has a long way to go, because though we are the largest producers of food in the world, we process only 10% of what we produce, whereas many small countries like Malaysia, Indonesia process almost 60, 70, 80% of what they produce. So as a result, in our country there are humongous wastages, and in a country whose population is growing every year, where land to grow food is obviously shrinking as the population increases, we have to have zero tolerance for food waste and to ensure that enough infrastructure is put up so that instead of being wasted, it can be preserved and it can be processed so that there is enough available for all.
I was in fact looking at the figures. Before 1990s, food processing was actually not a sector which was being thought upon so largely. In fact, with a turnover of $110 billion, it's almost accounting to 35% of the Indian food market. So what, over the years, if you look at the journey of the growth of the food processing sector, what have been the major factors which have actually contributed to this exponential growth?
Well, I would say if we look at it now, it's got a lot to do with lifestyle. If you think of the amount of time your grandmother spent in the kitchen, you would probably envision her with most of her days spent in and around the kitchen work. If you think of your mother, it reduced a lot. If I ask you, I'm sure you barely get time, and if you have a daughter like I have, she doesn't even want to go to the kitchen. So I would say changing lifestyles today with this increasing middle class with disposable incomes, families becoming smaller and nuclear, you need ready to eat and ready to cook. People are eating out much more than cooking at home, and domestic help becoming difficult, and also all these things are contributing to people wanting easy food to handle. You know, for example, peas. I can't think of anyone who sits and peels the peas now, whereas in my childhood you couldn't think of cooking any matar ki sabzi without sitting and peeling the peas, which for hours everybody would sit around and peel them together. Now even if you ask your domestic kitchen help to peel them, he says just get the frozen peas, which are as nutritious and as good. So I would say changing demands is what is leading to an increase in food processing, and at the end of the day you have to realize things were always processed, be it your milk, your butter, your atta, tea, coffee, everything we consume was processed. We just didn't realize that it was processed. And I think another important thing is, the kind of milawat which is coming in our foods, how the fruits and vegetables are being injected to ripen them fast, how the cereals are being colored, how the masalas are having color, how the milk is being contaminated. Now keeping all these things in mind, and it's all increasing by the day, somewhere processed food has a quality which you know that you're getting, because they all go through stringent quality checks. They all have to have that FSSAI, Safety Standards Authority of India, which ensures that there's a certain level of safety. So I think keeping all this in mind, today's demand of the public as well as the need for today is to increase food processing. And now to increase food processing, we need to have enough infrastructure in place. So as of the last 3 years, the government has worked to create an environment, policies, subsidizing creation of this infrastructure. While we have worked at grounding the infrastructure and ensuring it comes up, at the same time we have come up with policies like 100% FDI and multi-brand retail of food that is produced and manufactured in India to ensure that the markets get created, because you put up all this infrastructure, the creation of those markets is not there to the scale that the infrastructure is coming up, then again there will be a bottleneck. So we're already producing the raw material. We are one of the largest producers of food in the world. We're number one in milk production in the world. We're number two in fruits, vegetables, cereals, marine in the world. So our production base is there, the infrastructure we are putting up, the markets we are working to create.
But my question to you is that you yourself pointed out that the levels of processing, they are very low at the moment. If you look at a country like US, 70% of their food is processed, but we in India are almost processing less than 10%. So is there an area which has been not tapped potentially? Where is the gap area? And where do we actually need to work upon?
So basically the gap was that the lack of infrastructure. There lack of cold chains, there's lack of cold storage, there's lack of processing facilities, and one of the reasons for the low levels of processing was that this is an industry which is as capital intensive as any other industry, but different to the other industry. This is a seasonal industry. If you put up a processing plant, say mango juice, now mango comes only during a season, but your industry of doing everything with mango, mango pulp, mango juice, mango sweets, whatever you do with mango, you have to put up that entire infrastructure like you do. You have to hire the manpower, you have to run the bijli, you have to do everything the entire year, but it will only work for a certain season. So obviously it turns out more expensive rather than putting up some other industry. So this was one of the big drawbacks as to why this industry didn't progress at the same level, which is why over the last 3 years, now the government is providing those incentives. For example, Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana, 6,000 crores is going to be incentivized to give incentives to be spent over next 3 years. And this 6,000 crores will leverage an investment of almost 31,000 crores. And this will impact directly, indirectly almost 25 lakh farmers and create almost 5 lakh jobs. So this is what the ministry is doing, but as a result of the infrastructure created by this ministry, there's going to be a ripple effect down the line, which is going to be way more than this.
You just spoke about the cold chain facilities, that we don't have too many of them. Under the new policies, when you say that you're going to expand the infrastructure, what is the blueprint on expanding the cold chain facilities? Because I was reading somewhere that, there's a huge imbalance. Now, for example, 80% of the 217 lakh tons of cold storage capacity is engaged only by potatoes. And it's almost like 0.2% with other fruits and vegetables. So how are you trying to coordinate this kind of an imbalance?
So this is, be it cold chains or be it even reefer vans, refrigerated vans for transportation. If we need something like 70,000, we only have 10,000. If we need something like 60,000 pack houses, we hardly have 250. So there's a huge gap in what needs to be done, which is one of the reasons why I said that, if multi-brand retail comes in, which means FDI and multi-brand retail means getting foreign money to put up our local infrastructure, which will impact our farmers. And I'm glad that the government agreed to it and pushed it through. So this Kisan Sampada Yojana is actually an umbrella scheme of 7 schemes which come under it, which includes cold chains, mega food parks, mini food parks, clusters, backward forward linkages, upgradation of existing technology, expansion of existing technology. It covers the entire gamut. So this 6,000 crores is going to be spent in, if someone wants to expand the infrastructure, if someone wants to upgrade their machinery, if a farmer wants to create a backward and a forward linkage. The whole idea is to move the farmer from just production towards value addition and agro processing. So, and when we talk about the storages, like you said, no doubt that 90% of the storage today is only for potatoes, which is why in this Kisan Sampada Yojana, I have specially ensured that people doing fruit and vegetable processing will have higher chances of getting the grant. And when that comes in, we look at it that, the storages are of potatoes, but our mandate that comes under Agriculture Ministry. We do a cold chain. You have to set up a multi commodity cold chain and then have a backward and a forward linkage as well with refrigerated vans, something at pack houses at farm gates. So we create the entire chain and we're working to create a cold chain grid throughout the country for seamless transfer from production to consumption. And maybe even across the borders, because we're geographically very close to food importing nations like the Middle East, like Japan and all. So while we're creating this chain, what we have done is through technology mapped all the clusters throughout the country of where there is perishable raw material, and then tried to map that what is the lack of infrastructure over there. Now I have sent out advertisements for specifically those clusters, that anyone wanting to put up infrastructure in that area may apply, they will get higher marking in the marking system, because it's a very transparent way how we allot, how we disperse our grant.
It actually sounds like a complex layers and layers of, at least theoretically it sounds very good. But most of the farmers, what I have seen across the fields, they are not very literate. How would these farmers actually change their mindset? Because their mind is attuned to a kind of an agri-value chain where they focus too much on what is being produced. Their focus is not too much on the processable varieties. So how do you attune their mind?
So I think that's exactly the advantage coming from agricultural state like Punjab and a constituency which is totally agrarian. You've been into the thick of how farmers' psyche is and what, how they, even if they want to, even the progressive guys, they don't have the means, because, weather god playing havoc with one season, they wiped out. So understanding this in the new scheme, especially in the backward and forward linkage, which is for farmers to uplift them, I have also through the ministry hired Pricewaterhouse as well as Deloitte, two big companies, whose job is to go to wherever through this mapping we have found the clusters, to go there, get the farmers together, make it into a farmer producer organization, teach them how to keep their books, then plan what kind of a model for agro processing and value addition is will be feasible over there, help them fill up the paperwork for the Mantralaya, make the DPR, then put up the infrastructure, connect them to a market for 2 years, handhold them, make them stand and then move out. So this is something we've done from the ministry side, absolutely understanding that even if the farmer wants to, he doesn't have the means or the literacy to be able to take on that kind of a challenge, which is why the Mantralaya is paying these two companies to go and make those FPOs and get them all, collect them and move them in a group towards agro processing.
There are lots of unorganized segments in the food industry, and it's almost like 75% of them. Wow. So more than that. So how do you bring together these unorganized segments? There are farmers with smaller land holdings, for farmers with larger land holdings. Some are into the primary processing, some are into the secondary. So is there going to be a uniform model or a kind of a benchmark which they really need to follow?
See, you're right that over 90% is probably in the unorganized sector where food is concerned. Right. But somewhere with GST coming in, everyone's going to come into the organized net, and they will have to. If they are not, they will need to, because the systems in the country have now become as such. But as far as we are concerned, whether it's a small person, whether it's a big person, whether it's an individual, whether it's a group, whether it's self-help groups or farmer producer organization, our schemes address everybody equally. The idea is to encourage food processing so that the levels of processing from 10% go up. And that is our ultimate aim. And out of the processing sector, where milk processing has done really well because of these cooperatives which have come up, the Amul story, and also wherever people have collected, the processing levels have gone up, and that's when the policy has supported the technology and policy have supported the farmers, it has done very well. So that is what we're trying to move towards, where fruits and vegetables are concerned, because this is where the perishability is the highest. This is what affects and impacts the consumers the most when prices peak, and this is what farmers' plight is also due to not getting proper remuneration for these. So we are focusing a lot on fruits and vegetables.
But when you talk about perishable items, and reefer vans of course is one thing which comes to your mind, that you need proper refrigeration for these kind of items. I was talking to a few traders and farmers who said that setting up this kind of a logistics is a very unviable option because of maybe the huge operating cost and things like that. So how do you make it viable for maybe a small farmer who wants to, can he think of actually having or owning a reefer van and then carrying his items?
So in our cold chain scheme, for which we give 50% subsidy, what your project cost is, up to a limit of 10 crores, we give 50%. Now of course it's been brought down in the Kisan Sampada Yojana to 35, but up till now it's been 50, and we've just recently sanctioned 101 cold chains, and we've already operationalized the 30 which we had sanctioned 2 years ago. The cold chain scheme, like I said, is the entire chain. So when any transportation is involved, besides the cold storage facilities, the reefer vans are there. So that's a very important component. And now even in the new scheme which is coming up, in the 6,000 crore Kisan Sampada Yojana, again reefer vans is a very important component. So when you're getting subsidy to the extent of 50% or 35%, obviously your costs come down a lot more. the issue in reefer van is that why they call it unviable is that, if you take the produce and deliver it at a mandi, then the van comes back khali. So that's an additional cost. So which is why we have to make this grid where if it goes to X point, it must pick up the raw material, offload there and pick up something from there and take it to another point Y. Maybe not here, but maybe some. That's why entire grid is being mapped out and made. And like I said, that part of this component of our schemes is that this is important. And even in the backward forward linkage, it's going to be a very important part, because the moment anything cold comes in, you have to have the reefer vans. It doesn't work without. So besides where there's just going to be sorting, grading, packing, cleaning, washing and the primary processing which happens, but the moment you go into preservation, which is then frozen, you have to bring in the cold chain. So it's a technical thing which goes hand in hand.
A lot has been said about the multiplicity of laws and legislations, how it led to a very conflicting kind of an approach, it led to administrative delays. So what is the new kind of a legislative framework under which the food processing sector is functioning at the moment?
So one, of course, GST has been a big boon to food processing, at least, because as you see that the maximum perishability and wastage used to happen when those long lines of trucks every night we'd see at the border, the chungi, where they'd be waiting, and you can imagine any fruit or vegetable just standing there for hours, how much of rotting would probably be taking place. So now, of course, with one nation, one tax and seamless borders, that's something which has been taken care of. Of course, part of GST is also how we lobbied to ensure that food was kept at the lowest bracket, and which is, I think, about 75% of everything is 12% and below, and a big amount is on the exempt category as well. So this being one. The second thing is that the ministry is soon coming out with a food processing policy, which will again provide a level playing field and ensure that in every state there is a single window system where you can get clearances. We've also said that government should treat it as par with agriculture. There should be no CLU allowed for this. So a lot of things that we are coming up. Once this policy is cleared, which I hope it will be very shortly, and as soon as the states adopt it, I think it's going to be absolutely ripe for the kind of platform that World Food India is giving, where GST has made India a very attractive destination from a foreigner's point of view to come do business here, because for them to understand these multiple taxes and differences, they could just not comprehend it. So in my entire trip, I've noticed that there's a huge amount of interest post GST. And now if there's a common food processing policy where they know that whether we do business in this state or that state, there is a certain baseline, will make it much easier. So I think the environment is just ripe for a thing like World Food India to take place, which is going to be a platform for global people to come and meet with.
India. But I was reading about a few anomalies which actually existed, and I want to know from you whether those anomalies exist or not. For example, the fruit products order, that is FPO, which used to allow the class 2 sweeteners in fruit products, but PFA, that is the prevention of food and adulteration, it doesn't. So do these kind of discrepancies still exist with the new kind of framework under which
See, I won't be able to answer on that, because this is the standards is decided by FSSAI, Food Safety Standard Authority of India, which is an autonomous body which comes under the Health Ministry. Okay. And they have done a lot of good work over the last year and a half, where we have harmonized all our standards to the way things are done globally, and which has made India yet another attractive destination. So I don't know about this, it doesn't come under my ministry, but if there is any such anomaly, no one's pointed it out to me. If anything is pointed out, we're very proactive in interacting with FSSAI and getting it sorted out.
But still, when you speak to the farmers on the ground, despite all the new incentives which actually the government is taking to establish the new processing units, the proportionate results are not to be seen very quickly.
Because the new scheme has just come about in May, it's just been sanctioned in May. Even as we speak now, the expressions of interest are still being invited. The last date is not even over. So it's only going to get impacted on the ground once people get their projects sanctioned and they start, and every project, it's going to take a year and a half for the projects to come up. So when we talk about the mega food parks, which is the flagship scheme of this government, this ministry, we have worked in the last 3 years to ensure grounding, and not that the schemes are just in the air and on paper. For example, Mega Food Park scheme was a scheme which was launched in 2008, and there were 42 Mega Food Parks which were sanctioned. One park takes 24 months to come up. From 2008 till 2014, when we took over, out of 42, only 2 were operationalized. there was no signs of the rest of the 40. So we work to look at every 3 months having meetings, what is stopping where, what was just given for the heck of getting a project sanctioned and sitting. We cancelled all those and went in for it, re-allotted those to people who wanted to put up something. And I am happy to say that the kind of monitoring that we've done from 2014 to 2016, they put up in 6 years 2, we put up 6 in 2 years. This third year we've got another 6 which are ready. So 12 of them are operationalized. And we're committed that all balance will be done by the time 2 years are up, all of them are going to be operational. So we're working only when this infrastructure comes up. For example, one of the first food parks which I inaugurated was in Tumkur in down south, and which is with the Biani group. I mean, you have to see the way that's expanded and how it's impacted the farmers over there. So until the infrastructure comes up, yes, it's only talk, but once it comes up, you see that the positive impact it's had in job creation and on farmer upliftment.
But there's a lot of increasing demand for skilled manpower, like state universities. I was reading that they are offering courses in food processing, but not much is being done on research and development institutions. So are you going to carry on a plan where you simultaneously offer courses and at the same time there's R&D also being done in the sector?
So see, there's an ICR which does R&D in there's an ICR for every different produce that we have, and they are doing the research. Well, as even under my ministry, we have the NIFTM, which is the National Institute of Food Processing, Technology, Entrepreneurship and Management, the only food processing institute that there is. As well as we have another one down south in Thanjavur, which is Indian Institute of Food Processing Technology there as well. Both of them are doing their R&D as well, and I'm happy to say that NIFTM has 100% placement before the kids even pass out, B.Tech, M.Tech, all these courses, as well as research going on. Now we're getting a state-of-the-art lab ready, which is also going to be a lot into research. So while we are doing that, at the same time we're working on skill development as well, where we have gone to all the main sectors, the 6-7 main sectors of food processing, dairy, fruits, vegetables, meat, poultry, fish, all the main sectors, and ask them that when you hire people, what are the kind of skills that you look for? Once they tell us that these are the skills, then NIFTM has worked out a course content to impart those skills, and through third party agencies now we are imparting those skills and working towards skill training as well. So we are doing what we are at our own level. R&D is, while it's important, providing the education which is the main focus of our institutes, but R&D is also going on simultaneously. In fact, I would say that down south IIFPT has done an amazing job of even coming up with mobile food processing vans and food testing technology in mobile vans, which has transformed the lives of so many farmers, because you know, they just go from one village to the other, process and give them what they have, test and give them what they have. So the farmers don't have to put up any infrastructure, they just know that this van is coming on such and such day, they get their produce ready and they do something. So this is also a kind of R&D. Besides other things what they're doing as to what is growing in the fields, how do we preserve it and value add to it and put it, you know, make it more viable for the farmer, for him to earn some more. So a lot of work is being done, and specifically in R&D it comes under ICR and whichever produce that is, they are concentrating on it.
I heard Prime Minister in one of the rallies where I think it was in Punjab last year, where he mentioned that food processing is the new economic driver, like tourism. Then food processing is another sector which is going to offer millions and millions of jobs. So maybe in the next 5 years, what is the kind of scale of job creation you are looking at from this sector?
Well, let me tell you, World Food India, which is the first platform of this kind ever having taken place in the history of India, where 44,000 square meters of area, we got 40 countries globally, top countries in food processing sector participating there. We've got every state of India which is participating there. We've got leaders of industry from India and abroad coming together in the entire value chain, whether it's progressive farmers, whether it's technology providers, whether it's machine manufacturers of food processing, whether it's retailers, whether it's processors, the entire value chain coming together on one roof, along with the policymakers, along with the industry chambers, along with the global heads. So this is the first time a platform of this kind is taking place. We worked really hard over the last 6-8 months to go and meet the global CEOs of all the top companies coming over there. And
so you think events like these are going to boost the export, the food export?
Well, we are looking at making India the global food market of the world, the global food factory of the world. We're working towards making a cold chain grid that ensures that India becomes the global food factory. And I'm happy to say that whereas I had thought that post World Food India, I would be announcing the kind of, investments which are coming into India, but you'll be surprised the global interest generated has been so much that just by me going and visiting these people, they have committed almost $10 billion of investment, which is not a memorandum of understanding, but which is a commitment as to the work which is already starting and they're going to be putting in money. So now these $10 billion, according to me, is going to create almost 1 billion jobs. So that's something which is already committed now, and I hope the figure goes up much more.
So as many industry experts have been saying that food processing is a sleeping giant. So you're going to shake up this sleeping giant and make it sprint.
We've shaken it up. The giant has woken up. It started walking. We're waiting to push it to run and sprint and actually create what we want to, which is humongous amount of jobs. Farmers getting happy because they're getting good remuneration. What they can't sell in the market, they sell to a processor. So they get full value for their money. Processing, which then meets the demand of the market. And as consumers, you're happy. My growers, my farmers are happy. And this ministry is going to be happy that they actually triggered that off.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
So that's it on this episode of To The Point. See you next time with another personality. Goodbye and thanks for watching.